Well, thank you everyone for coming to our first event of 2019. Thank you for making it out on a little bit of a gray day. I think I especially have to thank our speaker, Chris Welch, who left home in Chicago in the snow, the ice. He began his day by shoveling the driveway so his wife could leave first, and then he drove down, listening to Hamilton as he made his way through the ice and snow. So, a man of historical sensibility and musical taste. So, I'm going to just briefly, my name is John Shaw, I'm the director of the Simon Institute, and what I'd like to do is just very briefly introduce Representative Welch, and then I'm going to step aside and let him give a presentation, and then we'll just open it up to questions. We'll go about an hour or so, but he will be glad to stick around for a few minutes and talk afterwards. So feel free to speak with him. Representative Welch is in some ways, I think, identified with a lot of iconic Illinois institutions. He went to high school at Proviso West, went to Northwestern as an undergrad, went to John Marshall Law School, was elected to the Illinois General Assembly in 2012 and began in 2013, and has risen steadily up the ranks. He was a member and a chairman of the House Higher Education Committee, and has done some really wonderful things in education, some sweeping historic acts, and also some smaller ones. I saw on his website where he's worked on a project to bring back cursive writing to, I'm wondering if there might have been some funds for remedial education. As anyone who's seen my handwritten notes would attest, I could use a fairly intensive class in cursive writing. But he also has done some wonderful things. I know he's been part of the legislation to make Illinois a welcoming state for immigrants, which is really an important initiative. He's now chairman of the House Executive Committee, which is one of the most powerful committees in Springfield. And just kind of a final personal note, I met the representative last summer. He was in Southern Illinois to hold some oversight hearings on the future of the SIU system. So he had open hearings both in Carbondale and Edwardsville, but had the wisdom to begin his fact-finding tour at the Simon Institute. Came here and we had a great meeting in the back room. John Jackson, who literally has written the book on SIU, gave him a wonderful and compelling history of the Institute. In fact, I remember at that meeting, Chris says, when that book comes out, I want a copy of it. So it's going to come out in about less than a month, isn't it, John? So the first copy. So
he's on the list.
Yeah. Okay, he's on the list. So, okay. So, well, let me just end there and just invite Chris Welch to speak for as long as he wants and to take some good questions from all of you. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, John, for such a great introduction. Good evening, everyone. How you guys doing? You know, John was telling you guys, when I left Chicago this morning, we literally were getting hit by a snowstorm, which is preceding our cold storm. So I was leaving town just at the right time. And, Hamilton is definitely one of my favorite musicals. And I've seen it a few times, but I've got this 2 CD volume that when I'm on long trips, I like to put it on. And literally, I got through the whole show on the way down. And 2 of my favorite songs are I Don't Want to Miss My Shot and The Room Where It Happens. And so I couldn't miss the opportunity to come down to Carbondale because you never know, I might have a shot at something by coming down here. And definitely here at the Paul Simon Institute, it's definitely a place where a lot of things have happened. You look around at the walls in this place and there's been a lot of history here. It's definitely a room where it happens. So I'm happy to be here with all of you. Happy to be here with my first Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Simon. When I started in 2013, was one of the first ones to welcome me to the General Assembly and put me to work right away. So thank you for your service and all you've done for the state. I want to thank John for being the director here and doing such a great job at the Paul Simon Institute. Let's give him a round of applause. I had a chance to meet the new Chancellor, John Dunn, and his Chief of Staff, Matt Bauman. I want to thank them for coming over and chatting with me earlier today. Linda Baker, who's always great and making sure I'm up on the latest in higher education and all the great things. Jordy Justice for inviting me to come down here today. Mr. Jackson, I still remember our conversation on the first day of school this year. And so I appreciate you, and I look forward to that book coming out because it helps guys like me who I love to admit I don't know everything. And I like to sit and learn from those who do. So I appreciate the work that you all are doing. So I come from the 7th District. Anyone know where the 7th District is located? Where's the 7th District located? I'm going to give me a quiz.
You're kind of west side suburbs, Maywood.
Kind of, sort of.
2 provisos.
He's good. He cheated off of John.
Grew up in Elmwood Park.
Oh, you're not too far. Not too far. Just to the north of me.
Yeah.
My district is West Suburban Cook County, which makes up Maywood is kind of right in the center. On my eastern edge is River Forest, and it's all suburban Cook. I don't have any Chicago. I don't have any DuPage County. I just have to deal with West Suburban Cook County politics. And in this state, you can appreciate when you can narrow your political focus, right? Don't have to deal with Chicago or DuPage County. Lieutenant Governor knows what I'm talking about. I grew up in my district. My slogan when I ran in 2012 was tested and homegrown. I was tested because I spent 12 years before running for state representative on the Proviso School Board. And anyone who serves on a school board, I want to thank you for your service because a school board will definitely test you. It is definitely hard work, and it's right there in the community. Everyone loves their school because they want the best for their kids. And so you truly do get immediate feedback, sometimes more times than you want it. And it really did help prepare me for this job. But it's truly an honor to be here with all of you tonight at the Paul Simon Institute. When I was growing up and really just learning about politics and really starting to pay attention to politics, Paul Simon was one of our U.S. senators. And he was someone that everyone admired. I admired Senator Simon because he was respected by his colleagues on both sides of the aisle. That's a rare breed these days, to be respected by Democrats and Republicans. And he did it well. And as a politician, I guess, this day and age, for lack of a better term, if I'm a politician in this state, I want to be someone that can be seen as working with both Democrats and Republicans. If you truly want to be successful in politics, you'll learn quickly that you need to have friends on both sides of the aisle. I just don't think you can get it done doing anything by yourself. A few years ago, I was invited to participate in the Edgar Fellows Program. It's a remarkable program that was started by our former governor, Jim Edgar. And one of the great things about the program itself is that actually Governor Edgar is actually there every day. He's an active participant in the program. He's sitting with you at a lunch table and you're talking to him and getting his opinions on politics then and now. It's just a great program. But one of the things that they really hammered away at was if you're gonna work in this industry, you wanna do it working with people on both sides of the aisle. Bipartisanship is not a bad word. It's essential to being able to get the job done. One of the things that I remember was the governor's former press secretary, Mike Lawrence, also was at the program the year I was there in 2016. And Mike Lawrence said that some people run for office to be something. Others run for office to actually do something. I like to think I'm one of those people that's actually trying to do something. If you want to do something and do it right, you definitely have to do it in a bipartisan way. That's why Senator Simon was so successful, because he constantly worked on both sides of the aisle. It is absolutely no secret anymore that Illinois suffered greatly the last 4 years. What we saw in this state was an epic struggle. It was a struggle between our legislative branch and our executive branch that caused our state to go an unprecedented 736 days without a budget. You'll probably never see that again. I hope we never see that again. 736 days. We were talked about all over this country. A cloud just hovered over all of us, you know. We wanted the clouds to move away as quickly as possible, but they stayed for 736 days. To break that impasse, it took both Democrats and Republicans working together across the aisle, sitting together, actually talking to each other to get it done. And let me tell you two instances where the Democrats and Republicans actually did that and we got it done. In the summer of July 2017, rank and file members, not our leadership, rank and file members did not want to go home another summer without a budget. It wasn't fun driving home every week and saying the same thing to people in social service agencies that were dying, to all the university presidents and chancellors and directors that were calling, asking for their money, saying the same thing over and over again. That wasn't fun. We didn't want to go home. We wanted to leave that Capitol with a budget. It was the first time, and I got to say the only time, that I've spent the 4th of July in Springfield. I didn't even know they had this big fireworks show. Brought my family and kids down, and we stayed on the lawn and watched the fireworks show in the summer of 2017. And we weren't going to leave Springfield without a budget. When rank and file members told House Speaker Mike Madigan that we were quietly working across the aisle on a budget, the Speaker didn't get in the way. He actually wholeheartedly embraced what we were trying to do. And because we were working together, because we were doing it in a bipartisan way, Democrats and Republicans, we came together. After 736 days, we finally got it done. We finally got through and broke that budget impasse. Shortly after that, not too long after, a lot of the same group, we wanted to continue that momentum. And I was really telling that group that an area that really suffered the most was higher education. As chair of higher education at the time, I had been making my visits around, listening to people, hearing the same story, whether you were in Northern Illinois or Southern Illinois, Eastern Illinois or Western Illinois. The stories were very much the same. We had to do something more than just that budget. So a lot of us, that same core of us, got together again, and we put together a higher education working group. It was bipartisan, it was bicameral, House members and Senate members. There were 12 of us, 6 Democrats, 6 Republicans, and we met, and we met. We drove all over the state. Some of these meetings were right on college campuses, listening to testimony. And then the session that ended in May of 2018, we presented to leadership 6 or 7 proposals that rank and file members came up with. And out of those 7, 6 of them are now law. One of them is a 4-year MAP guarantee bill. 4 years. You know, that's going to help us bring our low-income students back to our state universities. And another one that I'm really proud of is the newly created AIM High Scholarship, which is a merit-based scholarship program. That we put in $25 million, and the universities and colleges are putting in another $25 million to try to recruit those students who may be going to other states who are poaching our kids. We're saying, hey, we're back in the game. Let's stop losing our kids to these out-of-state schools. Let's get our top kids and have them come right back here. And that's what the AIM High Scholarship was all about. We were able to do that because we got in a room with both Democrats and Republicans, and we got it done. I remember when we first had our first meeting of that group, I remember my colleagues on the other side didn't believe that we really wanted to do something. I could tell they were uneasy. But the more we worked together, the more that trust grew, and the more things we were able to get done because we were working together. And both sides would go back to their leadership and take on those fights because we really believed in each other and what we were trying to do. As a result of Democrats and Republicans working together, we got some things done. We made it through some real tough times. I like to say that 736 days was our darkest days, some difficult days. We made it through those. The clouds are moving out. The sun is actually rising again. And it's really, truly a new day in Illinois. It's a new day. We have a new governor. We have momentum on our side. And we truly have to continue working in a bipartisan way. I want to emphasize that because on January 9th, the 101st General Assembly made history. We made history on day one. The new General Assembly that begins work tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock has the largest number of Democrats in it since 1982. 1982. And the largest percentage of Democrats since 1964. That's a long time ago. And we get to work tomorrow. But what I told my colleagues on Inauguration Day was that even with a supermajority in both chambers, we can't get to work tomorrow just as Democrats. If we're going to be successful, if Governor Pritzker is going to be successful, we have to do it together as Democrats and Republicans. If we do it together, we're going to be very successful. Families will come first. Safety will be first. Illinois will succeed. If we do it together, we can protect our education system from pre-K all the way through higher education. If we do it together, we can protect our health care, even when Donald Trump is trying to destroy it. We can do it and protect it right here in Illinois by working together. I honestly believe by working together, we're going to together guarantee equal pay for equal work. And I honestly believe even some of my Republican colleagues are going to vote to make the rich finally pay their fair share. I really believe it. We're going to do it in a bipartisan way. We're going to fix the unfair tax structure in this state. Because to truly address a lot of what's wrong with this state, you have to address our tax structure. They may not be saying it publicly right now, but we've been in those rooms and having those real conversations. Let me say this before I open it up to questions, and you guys can ask me anything. Shutting down government in Illinois didn't work. It was an abysmal failure. Shutting down the federal government the last 35 days, that didn't work either, did it? Rank and file members, I believe, made the president cave in. That's the road to success, is working together. To keep our government open after this 3-week bill that they just passed is going to take rank and file members, again, sticking together, both Democrats and Republicans. Another thing I learned from Governor Jim Edgar was that compromise is the essence of our democracy. It's the essence of our democracy. Compromise is not a bad word. When we passed that budget in July of 2017, neither side got everything they wanted. Both sides got yelled at. We went home, but both sides got praise. Compromise. That's how we get things done. And we get it done in a bipartisan way. We are here to help people. We are here to provide a service. And we can't run government like a business. You know, when we run government like a business, you're looking at the bottom line and trying to talk about profits and losses. Government is about helping people. It's not about profits and losses. Businesses are for making money. This is government. We're here to help people, and we do it by working together. And I am committed, when I go back to work tomorrow, to making sure that we keep that momentum going, that we hold our new governor accountable, and that we do it in a bipartisan way. Republicans and Democrats working together. How's that sound? I'd be happy to take your questions. I got a feeling this is going to be really, really good, Mr. Jackson. Question?
What do you see as the legislative priorities this session?
So I believe that the priorities are going to start with working together, keeping that momentum going. I think that if you watch the inaugural festivities, both of the General Assembly and the constitutional officers, we've made it a big point to talk about working together and not dividing our state up. The last 4 years were just awful. So start out just with the tone. And I think the governor is doing that very well. If you look at his new administration, he's bringing in Democrats, he's bringing in Republicans into positions. And I think from a substantive policy standpoint, the governor is going to present a balanced budget, I believe, on February 20th. And in order to do that, he's going to have to talk about revenue. You know, we've cut everything. We've cut the universities to the bone, wouldn't you agree? We can't do any more cutting. So we got to really have this conversation, and to think that we're going to do it, we're going to talk about that tax structure. We're going to talk about some real issues like whether we legalize marijuana or not. Do we expand gambling in the state? And a host of other revenue options. You know, and I think we're going to have a real discussion on pensions as well. But in my conversations with the governor and his team, they're really serious about these revenue proposals. And I was at 2 events at the Hyatt Hotel in downtown Chicago last week, and the governor was at both. And in both speeches, he talked about a capital bill. So it sounds like we're about to have a capital bill for the first time since 2009, so a decade. In order to pay for a capital bill, we're going to need some revenue. So all of that goes hand in hand. And I'm looking forward to that discussion.
Is altering the tax structure in the way you're describing, does that require a constitutional change?
To ultimately change it the way I'm describing, yes. Everyone hear the question, by the way? To change the tax structure the way we really need to do it, we're going to have to, it's going to take a couple of years, because we're going to have to, the General Assembly is going to have to pass via supermajority, you know, whether or not to put it on a ballot. We're going to have to put it on a ballot, you know, have that campaign and have the people decide whether we want to change our tax structure from a flat tax to a progressive tax. And then at that point, I'm confident that if we make our case to the people that they will say, yes, we need to change it and make the rich pay their fair share. Then it comes back to the General Assembly, where we would then have to, as a legislative branch, negotiate what the rates are. And at that point, that's when you really get down to the nitty-gritty about at what point do you tax a person and at what percentage. But that's a couple of year process. Question here, and then we'll come back over there.
It seems like a lot of revenue is being left on the table because the sales tax is only on goods. There's no sales tax on services. Is there any talk about rationalizing our sales tax?
I haven't heard any specific talk about sales tax yet. I have a sneaky suspicion we're going to hear a lot of proposals. The legislature, particularly the House members, are filing bills now. We're approaching February 15th deadline to file bills quickly. And so I'm sure we'll see a lot of proposals that even deal with our sales tax. Where they will go, that's another question.
About a week and a half or so ago, the New York Times ran a front page article dealing with the struggles of rural, regional, state universities. And talked about a number of these. I think it picked on University of Illinois, University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point.
Yeah.
But based on your experience with higher ed in Illinois, which faces many of the similar challenges that the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point faces, what do you foresee the future for rural, regional universities, state universities in Illinois?
I think that's a great question. I want to thank you for that question because I think the future is bright for rural universities like this particular campus. I'm excited about the new administration for obvious reasons. I think the devastation that higher ed saw the last 4 years was just awful, and I hope to never see that again. But I truly believe that this new administration is really invested in higher education and specifically in making sure geographically these regional universities thrive again. Because we know that if we lift up SIU Carbondale and Edwardsville and Western and Macomb and Eastern and Charleston, we're going to lift up those local communities. Those communities are all suffering, and that's because of our disinvestment. That's not a coincidence. When we started disinvesting in higher ed, our regionals started suffering. Then you're going to see a new commitment to that. And I'm really excited about some of the programs that are being talked about here. I think the new police training academy or institute is a great focus. But I think also just reinvesting in some of the great stuff that's already here, like this place, the Paul Simon Institute, the communications building. If they're not already on the list for a capital bill, someone should put that on a list, because that broadcast facility over there is something to be proud about. You know, your school's got some amazing stuff. A law school right here on campus. You know, I mean, right here in Carbondale. You know, we got to brag about this stuff. You know, and let's take the folks from Kentucky and bring them here, and let's bring them from Indiana, and let's get them here in Illinois, because we also know that once we get them here, 92% of them stay here. So I do believe, and I chaired the governor's transition committee on education with 3 other colleagues, Senator Menard and the CPS CEO, Janice Jackson, and also the IEA president, Kathy Griffin. We had a great group of people. We met, had some real hard discussions, and I think that the governor's team is listening. And all we can ask for in a leader is one who listens, because, you know, then you know their action is going to follow. And I think some good days are ahead. Question.
I want to follow up on that, because I remember reading last year that the U of I was asking the legislature for money to add like 20 or 30,000 more students. At the same time, the rural universities are hurting for enrollment. It almost seemed like they were going to siphon off what's out there that other universities might have a chance to get at.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how that gets rationalized in the legislature.
So, you know, part of the struggle the last few years when you're fighting over rations is that, you know, people start pitting each other, one university against the other, right? And I think U of I is the mothership, and we have to make sure the mothership continues to thrive. But I don't think we should make sure they survive and thrive at the expense of the others. Why can't everyone thrive? That's going to take money. But when we were disinvesting, the ones that suffered were the smaller ones. With more revenue put into the system, I think we can make everyone successful. And that's the key, is not help U of I at the expense of the others. And I think that's what's been going on in the past. And it's painfully obvious when you drive into some of these campuses. like I have, the minute you walk in, you see. And I blame that on the General Assembly and previous governors. We can help everyone if our priority is investing more revenue into the system.
I'm interested in your bipartisan goal, because I think it can be used both ways. A few years ago, when we desperately needed tax increases,
Yeah.
but the Democrats wouldn't vote for it unless the Republicans voted for it. And that could be seen as the interest of bipartisanship, but it was really just a club. You know, we're not going to do what we think is right unless you vote, because we don't want to take any heat from it. And I hope that's not the position we're in now.
So let
When
me.
you say we have to have bipartisanship, I hope that doesn't mean that Democrats aren't going to do what's right if the Republicans don't do it. Don't say yes because we don't want to take heat in the next election.
So let me answer your question this way. In Southern Illinois, where we are right now, I think most of your elected officials are Republican.
Yes.
In Western Illinois, in Macomb area, I think most of the elected officials are Republican. In Charleston, most of the elected officials are Republican. In Bloomington, where Illinois State is located, most of the elected officials are Republican. You guys picking up on a theme where I'm going? So one of the ways we were able to convince Republicans to help us break this budget impasse was we went out to these campuses and we had these kind of conversations. And who was sticking with the governor?
Not our guy, not our woman.
Republicans. Your community is suffering. Go talk to your elected officials. Tell them to join us. We're ready to make those tough votes. You have to do it in a bipartisan way to really get it done. As Democrats, you're going to take a tough vote, but it's hard to explain how we're the ones taking votes that help Republican communities while they get to sit back and just say no. Send us the money. Raise the taxes. Send us the money. But you guys, we're going to vote no, or we're going to vote present.
I think part of the problem the state was in was when we had a Democratic governor, we had both houses being Democrats, and we would not, the action was not taken. And this was before we were all Republican here. We had Democratic representatives here, but it was, it wasn't. The decision was being made to not pass it without Republican support.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak to the past. I can only
That
speak
was before your time.
speak to the 6 years that I've been there. And I got to tell you, especially watching the budget impasse that we had and seeing the places that were suffering the most and seeing that a lot of them were in Republican areas, it just made sense to say, come on, guys, help us get this done.
Yeah, and our
Help us.
representative did.
Exactly. Great questions.
Does it make it easier to address bipartisanship when you've got control over all of it as a party from legislature to the executive? And there's been a lot of discussion about revenue in this conversation. Locally, we've got a threat to our home rule status as a community, right? It's very likely that we'll sink below 25,000 people in Carbondale. Are there discussions going on at the state legislature regarding that threshold for home rule status and the population cap that it would require?
I'm not aware of any specific proposals. I've heard the discussion in the past, and that they haven't gone anywhere. I haven't heard any specific proposals in the 101st yet, but that is happening in other places other than Carbondale. So I wouldn't be surprised if that pops up. To answer your question about bipartisanship, I think whether it's an entirely Democratic-controlled legislature, entirely Republican legislature, or what we have in Washington right now, you got to do. The answer is to get it done working together. We can't have a stalemate like we just saw the last 35 days. The deja vu that was going through my head, and on the federal level, God, it's the ramifications could be even greater. the airports were not secure. The air traffic controllers were calling off. The TSA agents were calling off. We don't want to put our country in harm's way, and we got to do what's right and get in that room and come up with a compromise and let's get something done. Governor.
I just wanted to say thanks for coming down here and not being your first time, and we appreciate having someone in leadership who knows who we are and knows where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. How are you?
I'm better for you being here.
Thank you.
To echo what she said, because I've been bragging about you all over the Midwest, that you were coming down. No, I was. And I didn't stop you in the parking lot, and I wanted to, and I said, no, he's too busy, he's going somewhere, so I just said, let you go. But I want to ask you about a different kind of partisanship, bipartisanship. As a member of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, I was reading in the paper a few days ago that Congressman Rodney Davis
Yes.
is introducing legislation to declare the site of the Springfield race riot a National Historic Monument. And I'm asking you to go back to Springfield and do something for us old people from East St. Louis. And have somebody on your staff contact him and say, we don't need to be having two sites in competition. Amend that, and that the Illinois Black Legislative Caucus is totally in support that Springfield in 1908 and East St. Louis in 1917 need to be memorialized, honored, and healed. That legislation should not be, well, Springfield had it. No, we all suffered from it. And every region in this state, especially down here to Cairo and other places, with those 10,000 people who left East St. Louis in a week. If he wants to do that, it's because somebody's been pushing him to do it. But I would like to see the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus become responsibility for all of us, wherever we are, if we don't have enough people to speak up on our own behalf. So I'm just asking you to do that.
I'll be happy to
Thank you.
get more information after this meeting
Sure.
and take it back,
I will.
because it sounds like a very reasonable proposal to me.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Question in the back.
With Senate Bill, I believe it's 0107 with the assault, weapon ban.
Yeah.
It's a $25 fee, and it continues that there's still a chance that they could repeal, and so if you do pay $25, you would have to be charged with a felon afterwards. How do I know as an Illinois citizen that my gun rights and Second Amendment rights will still be protected in the situation that this state is in right now?
You said that was a Senate bill, right?
Yeah, I mean, just your ideas on it though.
What's the bill number?
0107.
So they must have filed it right away after we were inaugurated a couple weeks ago. I'm not familiar with that particular proposal. I will tell you, having been born and raised in the area that I represent, I believe in Second Amendment. I took an oath to our Constitution, both our U.S. Constitution and our state Constitution, and I certainly believe in the Second Amendment to our federal Constitution. But I also believe that, when you live in an area like ours, that there are some common sense gun laws that need to be passed without abridging, lawful gun owners' rights. But we have to recognize that some of these weapons that are out there are not needed. We don't need, to me, weapons of mass destruction on the streets of Chicago. We just don't. We don't need high-capacity magazines on the streets of Chicago. I don't know people who hunt with that stuff, although there's been a couple lobbyists that came into my office to tell me that they do, and don't touch their high-capacity magazines. Let's have that discussion. I do believe that there's some common sense pieces of legislation out there. That proposal, I haven't read it. I will read it, and I'm sure it's going to be vetted thoroughly. But I'm well on record. I voted several times for common sense gun legislation. I voted to ban bump stocks. You know, when you live in Chicago that has an event like Lollapalooza, for instance, God forbid what happened in Las Vegas, that could have been Lollapalooza, because he was certainly scoping out the event. He had gotten a room, and had he figured out a way to get all those weapons into Chicago and into that room, it would have been Lollapalooza. So that concerns me. And I don't want to see another police officer gunned down on our street by a guy who had on body armor and carrying a weapon with, you know, high capacity rounds. But I think all of this, we should have this conversation so that we don't abridge, you know, lawful gun owners' rights who are doing everything that they're supposed to do with them. Question in the back.
This is kind of off of her question here and his in the back about the bipartisanship, especially since with the Institute it's kind of a big deal right now. And I guess maybe to clarify a little bit more on, I think the essence of her question is kind of the same as mine. As far as bipartisanship goes with the supermajority, like in a situation to where, well, you do have the supermajority, so in a situation where you would favor bipartisanship and having Republican support for a given issue or bill, is it enough, like the idea for bipartisanship, is it enough of a drive for that bipartisanship to not use a supermajority to pass a given legislation, like, you know, for the reason of bipartisanship, when in reality maybe it should be something that should be passed with the supermajority, or in a similar situation, or would you just say, you know, swing the supermajority behind it, we need to get this done and go?
So I'm purely speculating and guessing, and this is just Chris Welch talking. I don't speak for anyone in leadership. I just speak for myself. All of us just came out of campaigns. The governor just came out of a campaign. Everyone made promises to their constituents. And I do believe first year of a General Assembly, you're going to see people trying to deliver on the promises that they made. You know, so my suspicion will be is that we're going to get a lot of things done just as Democrats. But if we're truly going to move Illinois forward, you know, thinking way down the road and keeping the progress going, we cannot do everything by ourselves. That a number of the things that really have to get done for this state is going to take bipartisan support. The reality is we made promises, and we're going to deliver on those promises. And to do that, we're probably going to have to rely on our supermajority on a lot of those votes. But the goal should always be bipartisan support. Questions? These are good questions. Keep them going.
Here at the university and other state universities, there's a fairly large cadre of people who have retired and are living on pensions. And when you were talking about revenues, one of the things you mentioned that would have to be looked at would be pensions. And so that strikes a real chord with those of us who are dependent on them.
Yeah.
Since because the state did not pay into Social Security, our pensions are pretty much our only source of support. And I'm very curious in terms of what the thinking is with respect to the state honoring its pension liabilities to the individuals who have worked for the state and have paid into the pension funds and are now being held hostage to the state not having lived up to its past payments into the pension funds and now want to essentially cut and run, if I understand your reference to dealing with the pension problem.
Well, when I reference the pension problem, I think it's an acknowledgement that we have a revenue problem. It's not that we made a promise, and the Supreme Court has spoken on this very issue, that we must live up to that promise. We have to live up to what's on that piece of paper. And in order to do that, we're going to need revenue. And that's why I think we're going to have to be open and listen to all of the ideas that come before our committees in the next few weeks on these proposals. And I know the governor is committed to generating new revenue. And one of the ways we're going to protect pensions is generating new revenue. There's no other way around that.
Chris, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Particularly for the students here, when did you first think about running for office? Was this when you were at Northwestern? And talk a little bit about your first campaign, both your work on the school board when you ran for Illinois General Assembly, what that was like.
So I feel like my first campaign was when I ran for school board, for class president in high school. Because I went home and I had told my mom we had to go to the store and get some, paper and boards so I could make some signs. I mean, we gave speeches, and it truly felt like I was running for office. And I was the first black person in my high school to be president all 4 years, class president. And so I was happy about that. But I left Proviso and went to Northwestern, and my major was communication studies and political science. So I've always had a love of politics and a love of law, and I feel like I'm living my best life because I'm a lawyer and I'm an elected official in the state of Illinois, where I was born and raised. A great life. I ran for my first elected office in 2001. I graduated law school, bought a house in the district that I grew up in, and a lot of the teachers that taught me at Proviso were still there. They hadn't retired yet. And the school, I think every entity was going on strike, teachers and janitors and support staff, and it was in the newspaper constantly. I was like, something's got to be done. Someone's got to step up. So I applied to run for the school board, and we turned in our paperwork. They took it, and then I get a letter the next week saying, thank you for submitting your paperwork, but no thanks. You turned it in too late. So we're not going to submit your name on the ballot. And I said, oh, yes, you will. You're going to put my name on that ballot. So I sued the school district. And we went all the way to the appellate court, and we won. And we used the lawsuit the entire time. What are they hiding? They don't want us to run for the school board? Are they kidding me? They took my paperwork. I sat there and waited, and they took it, and they don't want me to run for the school board. I just kept pounding away at them. And when we won, we took the court order. Look, we won. Welch versus Proviso School Board is still precedent. It's in Illinois books. Still the law that if they're there and they take your paperwork, that means they're open for business, and that they should submit your name for the ballot. And we won that election, and I was on the Proviso board 12 years. And I left to join the Illinois General Assembly in 2013. Does that answer your question? It does. New question, and then back to you.
How much of a priority is looking at sustainability and the issues of climate change in the state legislature, and what moves are being made toward the issue?
Well, as a legislator, I have been very involved in environmental issues. I'm proud of my 100% voting record on environmental issues. I'm really proud that the governor signed his executive order last week to make sure Illinois is on the forefront of this issue. And we're going to continue to press forward. Hopefully we'll be filing a new Future Energy Jobs Act bill this session that I'm going to be very involved with. We have to be mindful of these issues because I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I want them to have a world that they can live in and breathe easily, and not have to worry about asthma and other issues. And our environment's just too important for us that we have to be mindful of all of our climate issues.
Mm-hmm. And what does this new energy bill say?
Well, it's not written yet. It's called FEJA 2. We're working with all of the environmental groups to put it all together. And I'm sure once it's filed, we're going to still have to heavily negotiate it, just like we did with the first bill. But the goal is just to keep Illinois on the forefront of environmental issues. Take advantage of solar, power, and you name it. The wind farms, driving down 55 and seeing the wind farms. I love it because, you know, that's the future.
So is the idea to make it cheaper for people to change to sustainable energy, or?
Absolutely. That's always the goal.
All right, thank you.
No? More questions?
Let me chime on to her question, because our church is applying for a solar grant from the state, from the bill you just talked about. And one of the concerns is that there's so much demand that there's not going to be enough money available for everybody who would like to have access to those subsidies to do it. And so the second bill that you're talking about, a follow-on to provide additional funding, is going to be critical.
Yeah. Sounds like we need a lot of revenue, don't we? Yeah. Got a lot of concerns. But I think you're absolutely right. But I don't think it's going to hold us up. I feel good about it. No more questions? Another question. How are we doing on time?
A couple more minutes.
Okay.
How do you weigh the public health issue concerning marijuana against revenue?
Well, I think we're going to find that out as we go through the process. I have not sat at a hearing myself on the issue, and I'm starting to hear people for it. I'm starting to hear people against it. I'm very interested in it. As the chair of executive, I have a sneaky suspicion I'm going to hear a lot more about this particular issue, because that's the type of bill that would come before the executive committee. So we're probably going to have a lot of hearings. I don't want to tip my hand either way, because I want them to be fair, and I want to hear from all sides. You know, but clearly Illinois has a revenue problem. If we choose to go the direction of marijuana, whatever we do, we have to do it right. And we're going to have to listen to all of the experts, and that includes from a social justice perspective. You know, I just saw that the Cook County State's Attorney last week said that, you know, she's not going to prosecute people for misdemeanor marijuana violations, I believe was the statement.
Seems to me that we're trying our best to reduce smoking. On the other hand, it's what you smoke.
Well, like I said, we're going to have to listen to both sides. Illinois has a revenue issue. There's 9 states that already legalize it. What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? Let's take what they're doing right and see if we can make it better. Because we got to pay his pension. We got to fix the capital problems at this university. We got to bring Carbondale back alive and Macomb back alive and Charleston. There's a lot of issues. So I don't want to close the door to a legitimate revenue option. The thing to do is to make sure you look at all of the examples that are out there, listen to all of the experts, including law enforcement, and make sure you do it right. Question in the back, and then here, I think we got 2 more questions, you said?
Connected a little bit to the cannabis issue, you know, we've got progress on hemp now, both at a federal and the state level. You know, what type of activity or actions do you see as reasonable to help protect your modern farmer, right? Not necessarily the large corporations that can kind of control these industries, but to help the everyday person who can actually farm this, grow this, and get it into the system, whether it's for oils or bioproducts on that end, or on more hardened items like papers and plastics.
Yeah, I think the hemp bill is one we just passed last session. So, you know, typically when we pass something new like that, we got to allow it an opportunity to grow, no pun intended, to see what the issues are that, you know, that a trailer bill 2 or 3 years down the road may need to fix. I also think that with this particular issue, that's going to be taken into consideration. How do we make sure we don't impede upon what we already just put in place, you know, not even a year ago? That's going to be all a part of that hearing process. It has to be. How does it not impede upon the medical marijuana industry that we put in place with HB1 a few years ago? And you're seeing what's happening with that. All of that has to be taken into account.
with Governor Rauner, we heard a lot about, we're not gonna have a tax, if we have a tax increase, we have to have a reduction in property tax. It was a common theme of his. But there's no real connection between property taxes, which are local, and state income taxes, which are a state issue. I was always confused by how he could suggest that the state could regulate local property taxes.
Yeah.
When you're talking about revenue, do you see, or does the governor see a connection there between property taxes and state income taxes, or is that a red herring that the previous governor was throwing out there to confuse the issue?
Well, certainly the latter. He was an expert at that. You know, I do this event every year in my district, a property tax appeal seminar, with the goal of trying to educate the homeowners. And I start out every year, and there's some people that come back every year because I recognize the faces. And I always say, I make them bring their tax bill. And I start out like, go through your tax bill. Take it out, go through it. Show me where the state of Illinois is listed. And honest to God, they always spend a few seconds going through their tax bill looking for where Illinois is charging a property tax. They never find it, right? Because we don't charge a property tax. That's your local government. But then I do go through ways that we as a General Assembly could actually help. If we were not disinvesting in our schools and we were following our state constitution and properly funding our schools all across the state, our local schools wouldn't have to tax as high as they're taxing. So maybe they can actually lower their taxes if we can find a way to better fund our schools all over the state, not just in any particular area. But you will find when you go through your property tax bill that the local schools is probably 50% of it. So imagine if we were doing a better job of providing a state share, that's less property taxes that they have to take in. So then I ask them, I say, how many of you go to your local school board meeting? You know, how many of you go to your local community college meeting and your park district and your library board, and all of these things add up, you know. But again, I go back to, particularly with the schools, we can help. You guys have been great.
Maybe one more question.
One more question?
What do you think about universal pre-K in Illinois?
I love that idea.
Yeah, so do
I love universal pre-K. I believe full day kindergarten should be the law all across the state. I agree, but all of that takes money. And you know, when they say, well, stop filing those unfunded mandates, I just keep filing them. I'm hoping they'll find some money for me.
What's the highest tax rate that you're comfortable with?
I don't know the answer to that.
No, really. I mean, ballpark.
I think if you're rich like Bruce Rauner, we should tax you a lot.
Can you be a little more specific?
The rich should pay their fair share. Thank you guys. You guys have been great. Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to thank Representative Welch for making the long trip down here and providing such a wonderful presentation. And I'm sure he'll be glad to chat with you as he's walking out. He's heading back to Springfield early in the morning to do work, but I sure would enjoy chatting for a minute or two as he leaves. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.